Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of Coffee Talk. Today, I have legendary developer Bruce Eichner with us. You know, I was listening to something you did recently, and you said if you were a 30-year-old man today, that you would abandon New York and go down to Miami.
I think it is very difficult for a 30-year-old entrepreneurial spirit to do in New York between 2025 and 2050 what Ian Bruce Eichner was able to do from 1975 to 2000. Easier to do it in a place like Florida, easier to do it in a place like New Mexico, easier to do it in a place that is growing and where it's more of a business-friendly environment. The cost of land in New York on projects that there's no such thing as a $20 million deal. $120 million is small. $220 million is average. So the ability of someone to play requires way more capital than it ever did. Whereas in Florida, you still can do smaller deals if you wish. And the unfortunate reality of the city of New York is that it is a extremely difficult environment to do anything that's not a matter of right. When the COVID-19 came, the hospital workers that were working all over the city of New York were living in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
They're commuting an hour and a half to 2 hours because they can't afford. So the city was putting up hospital workers in hotels because they wanted them to work 2 shifts. Right. There needs to be a partnership between the private sector and government to create a template where the one thing that the cities and states have, which is underutilized land. Those unions have billions of dollars of pension funds, which I believe they would be eminently willing to invest in projects that are built by the unions and can be occupied by the unions. And all the city or state of New York has to do is take a piece of land on a city campus or a state campus and say 100% workforce housing and go and do an RFP.
You know how difficult it is to develop in New York. They literally wrote a book about you, about the difficulties of doing a high-rise in New York City called High Rise, which was a great book, by the way. What's the difference of doing a project in Miami, for example? I mean, you don't have unions there to begin with, so obviously you save a lot on that. But in terms of just getting approvals and entitlements, is it much easier in Florida versus New York?
So everything in our business has to do with exactly where you are proposing to do what. So you can't really talk about Miami. It's Miami-Dade County. Miami Beach is a more difficult place to secure permissions than Surfside. Part of my job is to figure out which localities are going to do this and which localities are going to do that. Right.
So it's not so much about the land opportunity.
More about the permitting.
The permitting, that's more important for you than the land opportunity.
Yeah, because you can buy a piece of land, but 1, what's the zoning? 2, what's the permitting process? And am I, in my lifetime, going to get site plan approval?
You're doing a project in North Bay Village, right? It's a quiet part of sort of Miami. Are you expecting to get the same prices per square foot in North Bay Village as you would in some of your other projects in Florida?
There are basically 3 categories of, quote, development. If you're on the beach, you're in $3,000 plus land. If you're on the bay, you are somewhere in $1,300 to $1,500 price land. If you are inland, you are in the hundreds of dollars of price land.
Right.
There are 3 causeways that connect Miami with Miami Beach. 2 of the causeways have very expensive housing on them. The 3rd causeway, the 79th Street Causeway, has largely had little or no development in the last 10 years. Why? The zoning was user unfriendly. So about 5-6 years ago, the newly elected mayor had conversations with myself and other people in the development community, and he said, what can I do to get you guys to come? Sure. And we all said, well, Mr. Mayor, respectfully, your density and your height, not terribly user-friendly. So he went out, very progressive guy. He hired a local planning firm, and they basically doubled the zoning, doubled the height, and basically did my favorite thing. So we bought land to do the second continuum at half the price.
You don't get that kind of welcome in New York City, right?
You get it.
Philly will mail you something in 2 years and you probably won't like it. But Florida doesn't, Florida has its challenges too, right? Like you have 15 major insurance companies who've just totally left the state.
There's no question that insurance costs have gone up. If you were building inland, you cannot pass the cost along to the end user. Inland is $500. If you are on the beach, you can pass anything at $3,000 a foot, which is one of the reasons I've turned to projects on the water, like Bay Harbor, like North Bay Village, like North Miami, where again, the attraction of water and attraction of being able to get into the property and out. I think the bigger challenge for the state of Florida is there is no subway system. There's a limited infrastructure in Miami. And one of the reasons that development is moving north is because it's painful to attempt to get into the city of Miami or out of the city of Miami. It's painful to try to get onto South Beach or out of South Beach, which is why it's starting to move north.
And a lot of other people who are investors and developers in New York, they're going down to Florida and other markets to deploy their capital. Obviously, there's all this tax revenue that's going to leave New York City, which is going to hurt the city overall. And it's not going to only hurt your pockets, but it's going to hurt the transportation system. It's going to hurt the fire department, the police department, all these other things that it's going to result in. Well, as somebody who loves New York, don't you feel like then now is the time to be proactive in terms of what you can do politically?
The reason I'm going to come back like magnetic north to affordable housing. So I have now for 5 years in a row, Brooklyn College, Downstate Medical, now a 3rd campus, which I won't name because I don't want to Kenahora myself, cursed. It's the 3rd time I'm trying to do between 500 and 1,000 apartments, make $5, but provide 1,000 people who work in the city of New York with housing between 40% AMI, average median income, and 120. How could that not happen?
Yeah.
I mean, most elected officials, their business is a business of being elected. And they basically have served in one government position after another. They don't look at balance sheets. So, I mean, again, it's not that I wish to be negative. What I'm trying to do is take what I'm going to call an unmanageable situation, that would be the city of New York, and pick something, workforce housing. If I can make one contribution and create 1,000 units of that, then I've done something within my control where I can turn around and say, Amir, look what we did.
Right. Well, that's not really your specialty, workforce housing, because you're a condo guy for the most part.
Correct.
But like, there's something else that the city went through that you saw before. You saw the same sort of vacancies in commercial buildings in the early 90s. And people thought, you know, what we're seeing today is the first of it. But in the early 90s, you had the same kind of vacancies. This time around, you feel that it's different?
Yes. When you had basically the stock market crash of 87, followed by the S&L crisis, there were a number of buildings that were empty. The government, the Fed, required every bank that was a lender to mark to market their loans, which forced them to take the empty building $200 million loan and mark it to $100 million.
Yeah.
Insurance companies didn't have that requirement. So if you were a borrower of a bank, they basically essentially reduced the value of your building by 50%. In the intervening 30 years, you have 900 buildings that were built 30 to 50 years ago. So they're technologically obsolete. Who wants to be on Lexington Avenue when you can be in a brand new building and the landlords have made it attractive? The other thing is that unfortunately, COVID-56 has created the appearance that, I mean, I know a major lender that relocated its accounting department to Israel.
Yeah. So what does that mean for New York? Because New York City, Manhattan especially, is it's a office market.
There's no question that the city is going to be monumentally challenged by a meaningful reduction in the tax base of its office buildings. Has to.
Well, Bruce, thank you so much for being here today. Any final words?
Just remember, not abandon the city, just have a very jaundiced view of its future.
Thank you.
A pleasure.